So if you're in the back and you see people coming in, tell them to come up here. There's 3 seats in a row and a bench, a cushy bench. Go ahead and get started. Are we ready? Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'm Glory Simmons, the director of Thatcher Gallery. I'm really happy to have you here as part of the Global Feminist Forum. The event is Finding Our Way, Feminist Approaches to Art and Work. And it's with Noopur Agarwal, Liat, Berdugo, and Jenifer Wofford. You're in for a treat because they're amazing people, and I can't wait for the conversation and the presentation. So, yeah, we're lucky. They are going to be talking about their individual journeys as artists, educators, and activists navigating the unexpected challenges connected to gender, race, class, and other social constructs. And in case you didn't know, the Global Feminist Forum is celebrating its 25th anniversary at USF, and it's, agree. That's great. And it's part of the much larger international March 8th International Women's Day, which was Saturday, I think. The forum fosters informed multicultural and global reflection, dialogue, and participation. And Thatcher Gallery and the Department of Art and Architecture are pleased to be 2 of the many co-sponsors. There's seats up here, I know. So, I hope everyone got to see a little bit of the art by the artists. So I'm just going to introduce them all at once, and then each artist will come up, talk about their work, and do a slide presentation, and then there'll be time for questions and answers. So, in addition to directing and teaching in USF's design program, Noopur Agarwal is a practicing visual communication designer. Her creative output often takes the form of experiential graphic design and includes brand identity concepts for events, organizations, exhibitions, publications, and advertisements. Liat Berdugo in the center is an artist and writer whose work investigates embodiment, labor, and militarization in relation to capitalism, technological utopianism, and the Middle East. Her work has been exhibited and screened at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco and MoMA PS1 in New York, as well as internationally. She is in an upcoming exhibition at San Jose State University Art Gallery as well, called Click on My Mouth, Language and Technology, which opens next week. I was gonna check, I've got that right. Okay, phew. She is also one half of the art collective Anxious to Make and a co-founder of the Living Room Light Exchange, a monthly art series. She currently is an associate professor of art and architecture and director of the user experience, user interface minor at USF. And Jenifer Wofford's work is informed by hybridity, history, and calamity. Born and based in San Francisco and raised in Hong Kong, Dubai, Malaysia, and the Bay Area, Wofford studied at SFAI and UC Berkeley. She has taught fine arts and Philippine studies, taught in both of those programs here at USF since 2007, which has been a little while. That might be the year these folks. She has presented her projects at most of the major art venues in the Bay Area, from SF MoMA to the Asian Art Museum, YBCA to Southern Exposure, BAM PFA to Oakland Museum of California, as well as in Seattle, Chicago, Manila, Hong Kong, and beyond. She is 1/3 of the Filipino-American artist trio MOB, so I love that there are these collaborative things going on with you two. She is the recipient of many art awards, including the 2025 San Francisco Bay Area Artavia Award. So thank you for being here, everyone. So Noopur. Okay.
going to give you a little bit more context about my piece in the show. And actually, I want to let you in on a little bit of a secret. It's actually a project that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And I don't think you see that in the booklet because it's got a lot of polish to it, all right? And so it made me uncomfortable because it's a different way of working for me. So usually in my work, it's based in advocacy work, or I'm bringing my own personal context to the work, and this project doesn't really have that in it, okay? So,
I'm going to just interrupt.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear okay? Because we do have microphones.
Oh,
Okay.
should I do the microphone?
Are we
Would that
okay
be
back
helpful?
there, or do you want a microphone? Okay. Or, yes,
Okay.
microphone? Oh, no, that's a yes, they're good.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
I prefer no
There's seats
microphone,
up
but
here, folks.
let me
There
know.
in the back, there are more seats.
That's okay. Okay.
Thank you
All
for
right.
letting me.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
the piece is called Housework, and the name is derived from unseen and unpaid labor, often associated with gender work. It is an original typeface project. It's very much a work in progress. So there is a bold style that is not yet completed. There is an italic style where one letter has been started. And there is a bunch of diacritics that still need to be completed. Diacritics are like accent marks. So it's very much a work in progress. And one thing you see a little bit in the book is you see a little bit of my process, but not a lot of it. So when I'm designing these letters, I'm using pen, broad nib ink pens, pencils, drafting the letters first, and then further refining and digitizing them. So you see a little bit of the mess, but what the book is not showing you is like the distress this is causing me. All right, and it's like you're seeing some of it, but you're not seeing the distress. And the reason for the distress, I think there's a couple reasons that this project is a bit distressing for me, is because it's actually my first text typeface that I've ever designed. So it's a new process for me. So I'm used to working like this when I'm designing a typeface. This is actually called lettering. So some of you have had me for typography and we've gone over this. This is called lettering. And lettering is actually drawing specific letters for a very specific context. It's not a whole typeface. You're treating the letters like images. The letters have a ton of personality to them. They're usually for a display context. It would be inappropriate to have all of your body paragraph of long form content in this bubbly lettering because you wouldn't be able to read it. It wouldn't be readable and legible, all right? So what I'm doing with this typeface is the opposite. So it's being optimized for readability and legibility for long form context. In fact, the letters, you want them to actually be invisible workhorses on the page because you don't want them to take away from the actual reading experience and the actual content. So what you're seeing here is me testing it out for long form content, all right? So I think one of the reasons this is uncomfortable, so it's the first time I'm kind of working in this context, but another reason it's a bit uncomfortable for me is because you get hyper focused on just one letter form. So I'm like chiseling, what is the curve of the A? And there's not a huge amount of concept, deadlines, urgency, advocacy. These are like the constraints I'm used to working with. Like advocacy, there's partners, there's budget. There's like not a lot of that driving those decisions. So I made like the A and the G two-story because I could. The J is got this, the uppercase J has like a descender that goes beyond the baseline. And that's a detail that I added because I could. Like it's not, like that's not a thing that often happens in a typeface, a text typeface, but it can sometimes. And like, I'm like worried about whether it's like legible and cohesive, but like that's the only driving factor. And that's actually very uncomfortable for me because again, I'm usually bringing in my personal context, I'm bringing in advocacy work, and this is just because I wanted to, and that's like, feels dirty in some way. Like, I don't know. Okay, so so what I actually did here is this is where I started and then I stopped because it just felt so uncomfortable for me. And I actually stepped away from this project and like the whole show is about wayfinders, and oftentimes there's artists, I'm sure, in the show that have also stepped away from the work and had to come back to it. It's never really kind of a linear direction. But so I wanted to share some work I was doing after I stepped away from the typography project. And this is work that I actually felt more comfortable with. Like, I could work on an abortion justice campaign more comfortably and with more conviction than the letter J. And so what you're seeing here is I was commissioned by the US for Abortion Project. Close collaborators and friends of mine, Allie Place and Kathy Mueller, in response to Roe v. Wade being overturned in 2022, created this project. And it's calling for designers to submit designs from all 50 states to reflect the broader support for abortion rights across the US. All the proceeds went to the National Network for Abortion Fund. So I had the original design. The design that you see here, it's on a t-shirt. It comes in either print, poster size, sticker, buttons. I was really aiming to destigmatize abortion with this design. And I also took on a project lead with this project, and so anytime there's a new submission, I'm uploading it to the website, making it so that it's got the correct Shopify account so that you can download the work, that the artists and their intention are getting credit. I'm also creating promotional materials for the project, so there's some social media posts and posters that you're seeing here. So this project had a sense of urgency to it. It had timelines, it had constraints. I loved that. I felt comfortable with that, okay? I also am working on an advocacy project for Sister Corita Kent. I am a big fan of Sister Corita Kent. She was a pop artist in the mid-century, a nun, an educator working in LA. The work is still super, super relevant. Two collaborator friends of mine, Leah Thompson and Jillian Schultz, are creating a documentary film about Corita Kent's work. I'm passionate about preserving her work and her legacy, so was brought on to collaborate with this work as well. Again, this work is advocacy, it's collaboration, there's a sense of urgency. What you're seeing here, where it says Save Corita's Studio, that is a campaign graphic that I created because the studio's down in LA, and the studio was gonna be torn down, demolished, to make room for a super, super, super fancy high-end grocery store and their parking lot. And at the time, we not only wanted to save the building, but we also wanted the building to be deemed a historical, cultural landmark. And at the time, there was only 4% of US landmarks were devoted to the legacy of female identifying artists and contributors. So it was important to us to not only preserve the building, but get it designated as a landmark. So we got it, it works, which is great. The things that you see in the middle are stills from the film that is being worked on right now. So I am working on the graphics associated with the film. And then the documents you see towards the right are recent documents that I put together for the production and directing team, because the film was funded and then defunded by the government, which is something that is happening all the time in the arts right now. So we're hoping to bring a short to the university. We're hoping to collect donations and keep the project going. So again, work that I felt personally, that I felt comfortable with, advocacy, deadlines, I can do it, okay? Another example of work that falls within this category, I actually showed this work here about 3 years ago, the last time we had the triennial. This is collaborative. I really liked working collaboratively, again, as opposed to the typeface, which was me just like toiling away in my studio on the letter J. This was done in conjunction with Kathy Mueller, the Center for Urban Pedagogy in New York, and Caring Across Generations. Caring Across Generations is a nonprofit that advocates for a better care system in the US. And what this piece is doing, this piece is specifically, it's not only advocating for a better care system, it's for family members who have found themselves all of a sudden providing long-term care for a loved one. And that is also a subject matter that's near and dear to my heart as I try to navigate elder care. Everything that was designed in this piece was super collaborative and super intentional. So we didn't use photographs because we didn't have a budget. The illustration style is intentionally a bit realistic but messy because we didn't want caricatures. We wanted it to feel real and relatable, but we wanted it to feel messy because this whole system is messy. And then the type we created for it was also hand done to match the style of the illustration, right? So there's very intentional reasons why we're making certain design decisions. Again, which is different than what I'm doing with that typeface, all right? So let's get back to the typeface, all right? So about a year ago, like this time last year, a friend of mine was like, what are you gonna do with that typeface? Is it just gonna like sit on your computer and rot? And I said, yes, it is. It's just blah. I just don't know what to do with it, all right? But I went home and I looked at some of my original source inspiration for the typeface. I opened up that folder, and the big document that you're seeing was the original kind of impetus or inspiration for this kind of typewriter-esque font that I'm making. So it is a document that I found in the UN archives. And in design, I know a lot of the folks in the room are designers, and especially when you're in typography, but also throughout your career, you're trying to pick the most appropriate typeface for a project, right? Like what makes sense conceptually, what makes sense from a readability standpoint, legibility standpoint. What I thought was fascinating when I saw this document is actually about the equality of sexes and how it should be, equality among the sexes should be a basic human right. And that's what's saying in this document. I thought it was really interesting that like no matter how, of the time when this was written, no matter how unimportant or important the document was, it was in a typewriter-esque font because that's what the technology had in the time. So that's like kind of the loose jumping off point as to why I was making a typewriter-esque font. Okay, so going back into some of this inspiration actually reinvigorated the project for me a little bit. So I went down this meandering research hole about typists, typewriters, typographers, drawing clerks. I was uncovering where were there women and folks of color in the historically graphic art sector. Computing, coding, and what I realized is that they're there often in our design history textbooks. We're giving credit to one sole designer for the typeface, but really there are other folks involved with that. So like what you're seeing up here, those are drawing clerks, and they're women. Often it's women, often it's people of color, and sometimes slaves and indentured servants in the print house that are really engaging in the graphic arts. And it's not just like one white dude doing it, toiling away in the studio. So that actually that research kind of invigorated the project for me. And I actually have brought this research to my typography classes. So now we're kind of engaging with collective labor and messy history around the print industry, around the design industry. And that's been fun. That part has been fun. And actually, like just in the fall, I decided to draw letters again, right? And so I started drawing some more letters again. There's still more to be done. But so the project has been uncomfortable for me because, you know, it's not advocacy work, it's not personal, it's not super urgent, it's not something I had done before. But I think I also needed permission to do the work. So I think because of my positionality, being a woman of color, I felt like I always needed to do advocacy work, or I always needed to be doing work that like contends with my identity. And like telling myself I actually didn't necessarily have to do that was very freeing. And now I kind of enjoy just drawing letters in my studio on Friday. Like that has been kind of nice. And I have to like let go. The designer in me is like, what's the timeline? What's the budget? Like ship this, ship this, ship this. Like just letting go of that has been uncomfortable, but very liberating. And in the spirit of unseen labor, I need to thank people that are helping me in behind the scenes on this project. So because this is a new project for me, I've consulted a lot of expert typographers. And also I have to thank my family and USF that gives me some space to sit in my studio and just draw a letter J and cry about it for some reason too. So yeah, that's it. Do you want me to bring the other one?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, I'm Liat, Berdugo. It's nice to be here. Move, yes. Thank you. All right. So, I'm gonna jump, no. I'm gonna just say like a little bit about my work in the past and then about the work in the show. And I'm gonna start a little stopwatch for myself. So a lot of my work has to do with copyright. The bottom diagram here is the patent that Apple uses to patent the pinch to zoom feature. So they own that, by the way. So I made a dance where I tried to copyright the dance of zooming myself into a camera. Okay, copyright was denied. The U.S. Copyright Office said this is not a dance. Dance is copyrightable art. We've deemed this to be an aerobic exercise program. And I was like, what? So I actually made an unpatentable multi-touch aerobics routine with a collaborator. And this was performing it at a media arts series in Germany. So this is like large scale rotating. Okay, up in the side you see us like scrolling. Okay, so we were doing all of the patented gestures that Apple has owned. I also make work as part of the two-person art collective Anxious to Make. This is a video piece where we found all these actors on the internet who sell their services as twins who will be spokespersons for you. But none of them are real twins. They all double themselves in post-production as a way to get more money. So we wrote us a video that tells a story throughout all these different sets of twins. I also do a lot of work that has to do with coding. This is a piece I did that's a captive portal. So if you've ever tried to join the Wi-Fi on a plane and they're like, watch this ad first. That's a captive portal. And there was a museum that gave over the captive portal to artists. So you could show art on people's phones when you joined the Wi-Fi. So my piece, what I made people do was just shake their phones vigorously. Right? And then once they shook them enough, they could connect to the Wi-Fi. So really getting at these ideas of what are we willing to do for technology? Okay, I've also done some ChatGPT plays that were here. This was a site-specific video for the Thatcher Gallery about deans and students and professors who come see art in a library. And I have it animated with talking cats, which are just the material of the internet in many ways. And I also am a researcher, so I spent almost a decade researching video archives in Israel-Palestine, and that's a book, and it's here in the library if you're curious. Okay, and then I became a mom, and I was like, how do I make work? This is hard. I was so used to having concentrated blocks of time to make work, being able to go away to residencies. And not only could I not go away, I also sort of didn't want to go away. And that was a really big change for me. That was about almost, 5.5 years ago at this point. So after I became a parent, I started struggling to make work again. And because I'm a coder, I wrote a bot. basically an algorithm. And the way it would work is like every time you clicked, it would generate some other project idea you could make art about. So make a large found object art piece, produce a podcast about your child's suffering, like all of these things, idea after idea. And then I printed some of these on a shower curtain, which are behind you. So it says, produce a bone carving that considers what it feels like when your child learns to hug. Produce an ephemeral card game that considers magical beginnings and enchanted lives. Produce a monotype about Kegel exercises. Create a machine, right? So I'm basically how this algorithm worked is I'm giving it mediums that I listed, and then I'm giving it topics. And I'm having it combinatorically and randomly kind of put these together. And the reason I put it on a shower curtain is I, at that time in my life, felt like the shower was my only place alone. And then I was thinking, like, how can I make this like an interactive art piece? Like, and also kind of talk about how like cumbersome sometimes being a caretaker is for a small being. So I also made the algorithm on these giant dice. So this giant die has 6 different mediums on it, and the idea is you throw it and you see how it lands. It's like, okay, make a drawing. And then this one has the topics, and you would throw it, and it's like, okay, make a drawing about doulas. That's your assignment. And so this was like a kind of physical instantiation of this algorithm. By the way, this font, for those of y'all in here who are designers, I see you. This was designed by my friend Kel, and it's a variable font, which means that it's not always the same. There's settings in it you can change. And it's designed to look like, you know, vinyl lettering that peels and slowly starts peeling on signs. So this would peel, and like it becomes less and less. So I really like this because I thought of these as a kind of like things that get dirty and messy as you play with them. Oop, there's that, okay. And that's my oldest kid on one of these. And here's him on it just last week at the Thatcher, looking really upset that I'm taking his picture. And I kind of felt like this is like the culmination of the work in a way. It's like my older son's like really excited to come to the show because I don't let him jump on my art in my studio, but I do in the gallery. And like him kind of getting to play with it and interact with it, which was, it's very meta, as someone said to me in the opening, and the meta quality of it is the sense of like, he's kind of why the piece exists, and he really likes jumping on it, even if he doesn't know that he's why. And so like this kind of feedback loop of inspiration or constraint, as Noopur talked a lot about, like not having constraints, or in my case, having too many constraints that led to a constriction that then led this piece. And he is the constriction, but like also how beautiful that constrictions can be. Okay, great, I have a few more minutes. So the other work I have in the show is I have this book over here called Seeing It for the Trees, and I have this chiffon banner that's like hanging in that hallway over there. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about these works. And these works both have to do with Israel and Palestine. I grew up mostly in the States. My first language actually wasn't English, though it was Hebrew, because when I was a kid, I lived in Jerusalem. And I'm an Israeli citizen also. And a lot of my work in the past, over a decade now, has been really thinking like hard about Israel and Palestine and what my family and my own responsibility is for that place. And I also think that when we talk about wayfinders, oftentimes it can be like a wayfinding that comes through identity and also through like shifts in political views, which was definitely what this work was for me. Yeah, so both of those works, they draw from this image archive of an organization called the Jewish National Fund, or Karen Kayemet L'Israel. And this is what their archive looks like. It's got over 50,000 images online. And this organization was founded before the State of Israel. Its goal was to buy and hold land in what was then Ottoman Palestine for exclusive Jewish settlement. So that's the goal. Today, the organization has, they own over 13% of the land in Israel. They're the largest private landholder, and they still hold it for exclusive Jewish use. So it's often been described as the state's sort of like land laundering body, because it can do things that are exclusive that a state would be labeled as racist for doing. Okay, so I really wanted to research this image archive, and the main thing about this organization is that they're known for planting trees. So one of the ways that they were able to hold land was to plant trees in it. So if there weren't enough people to settle the land, they would plant a tree, and then tree law would prevent that space from being cut down. So it was like a way of holding the land. And I came to this because I planted a tree with this organization when I was 6 years old, before I kind of knew more about it. So yeah, this actually has another bot. I also was like really struggling to research this image archive. I was super curious about it. But I was like, I'm a parent, how do I do this? I'm always interrupted. And I thought, okay, what if instead of feeling like I'm always interrupted by my kid and I never have time to make my art or do my research, what if I come up with a system that my art or my work can interrupt me? So that's what I did. I scraped all these images, all 50,000 of them, which means downloading them from the web. That's called web scraping. And then I wrote a bot, so here's some code, and it's a bot that ran on my computer, and what it did was literally text me one image every hour for my waking hours, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So every day, boop, turns 9, one text, okay? And I lived with this for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. This was the first image I got from the bot. It's Pablo Casals, who's a famous Spanish cellist, and there's his tree. And this became like a performative lecture. I also did a lecture where instead of having images on a screen like here, I literally texted everyone in the audience in real time. So like trying to get at the kind of interruption. And that's in that book. That was my first iteration. I'm gonna scooch on through this to this chiffon banner back here. So there are 46 forests in Israel that have been researched, and they're specifically planted over the ruins of Palestinian villages. And that banner has images from one. It's a town called Sipori. It's over the village of Saforia. And so all of the images on the banner are images I found from that place where I used AI to generatively remove the people, kind of trying to like imagine a future that might have been different for this site. So I'm literally like going into Adobe Lightroom and just like painting over these people. Sometimes the results would be really weird with AI, so I had to kind of do some work. But then it was important to me that there be like some haunting traces of what was left behind, so I didn't fully remove them. I just kind of turned down the opacity of it. And yeah, that's this work that's here. It's very new. One thing I really liked about trying out this work was like going back to physical production. So I had to do a lot of sewing. I used a serger, which is a really fancy sewing machine that's used for edging. We have a serger here at USF, so if you've never used it before, it's in the Hive. They're super fun. And I combined some of these like archival images that I used AI on with also current screenshots from the site. And I did this work in a residency in Berkeley called Kala, where I'm currently an artist in residence. So that's where I had the facilities to do something much bigger, because that's 28 feet long. And that's what it looks like in that space. So that's just like a little taste of my practice, and thank you so much.
right? I need the thing, don't I?
If you, yeah, I think so.
I'm okay. Signed in as Lawyer Simmons. Is it on? It's on. Hi. I don't need it for long though. And mostly, I will not be using it. Hi. So I was trying to kind of figure out how to talk about my weird project in this room, and let me set my own timer before I get rolling here. Which is you can see between the two entry portals there's a door frame and some rocks. And like, it's not fully within the framework of this particular conversation, but we'll get there. And I think that the through lines, as I was thinking about to talk about today, in the context of the Global Feminist Forum, was like the ways in which, for me, feminism and many other things in my art practice and my life really manifest through just the way that I use energy or present with honesty, how I incorporate forms of solidarity or collaboration into my practice. And honestly, I can't do anything without being a little irreverent, you guys. And I'm a very delight-driven person. And while I don't ever want to gloss over the hardships of life, in fact, this is my way of coping. If you come visit me in the office, which is XArts 015, at least till May, I have this little placard on my, I guess it's called a desk, that my friend Meng painted. And do you guys know what this is? This is going to be the national anthem when I'm president. It's a very old song from almost 30 years ago now, right?
It's 30 years?
Yeah, it's old. But it was part of this project I did in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 during the women's marches. Because the first round of Trump 1.0, these protests were massive, for those of you who recall. But everybody was really stressed out and really angry. Can't imagine why. And my reaction to that was like, well, let's do something that's the opposite of that. So I organized something like a rowdy dance brigade, primarily women of color, but any kind of ally was welcome. And we just kind of showed up and with a rolling sound system, and we were just kind of like a big karaoke machine / dance party. And it just changed the energy, you know, it took us out of that place of like intense, like paralytic anxiety and into this other place of like, all right, let's do this. And I think it kind of, let's see if we can get the audio to work here. It's not really working. Is it working? A little bit?
Yeah, I think so, but I might have turned.
Nope. You gotta hear the anthem, guys.
I could hear it. Yeah.
Is it loud enough? But it's like, it needs to be in like your soul loud. No, that's not audio. Let's try again. Killing time. A little bit better, right?
It's on the speakers.
So it was just like everybody got really rowdy. Everybody was excited to actually have fun while being angry and scared at the same time. It was very wet during the later part of the first Women's March. So we did this like all 4 years that there was a Women's March, and it was pretty fun. And yeah, I think it really got me to this place of really thinking through like how to use color, how to use energy, how to use pop culture, how to use a few different things to just, I think, get people moving again, and honestly just to cope with my own like, you know, like struggles with these emotions. So now we could move forward somehow. Yeah, okay, we can go. But colors is not, like, maybe it didn't start there with me. One of the other things that came up in the No Scrubs marches was really the fact that I just love collaborating with other people, primarily women, but not exclusively. And for over 25 years now, I've collaborated with 2 other Filipino-American women. We're known as MOB, and this is just us in our native habitat, which is also known as the Madonna Inn. Do any of you know about the Madonna Inn? Thank you. It's like the greatest place on earth. Also, when I'm president, it will be the White House. But so the three of us have been doing work for a long time together, and it tends to be very kind of draggy, cartoonish, but also rooted in like deep forms of feminism and like really trying to center what was historically marginalized narratives and making them like right there in front of you instead. So this was actually a large print that we showed in the last Thatcher faculty triennial 3 years ago. And it was an extract from a larger project which was presented at the Asian Art Museum in 2022, which was more of our clowny nonsense here. Too little time for me to go into great detail about this project, but FYI, this is kind of, there is a trajectory from this work straight through to what you're looking at over there. Because in fact, that door frame over there is a door into a room at the Madonna Inn, the next White House. The Brides and I, or Rhianna, Liza, and I have also collaborated in a sub-project. We're known as Mob, but then Mob also had another incarnation where we are the CEOs of a very shady tech corporation known as Madame Nangool. Another lecture which could take another 20 minutes all by itself. But we've been playing with these, various kinds of tropes of performance and theater for many, many years in our practice. This is us, like one of our, corporate portraits here. This is us, like when we were a little younger. And this is us when we're feeding. So this is the sensibility that's been going on in my head. Even when I'm working solo, I think somehow this is just what's happening in my, just so you guys know, this is how my brain works. And so, and this is also hilarious because while I think Noopur, where you were speaking, one of the librarians wandered through here, who was one of the dancers in this performance piece of mine. That's Brandon Logan, who worked here. So ask him about how he performed in Wofford's piece. This whole project was being, I think, managed by Megan Bedelia, who now teaches in design here as well, and has been one of my collaborators for some time. Anyway, theatricality and color just comes up over and over and over again for me. And I was designing a very particular kind of Memphis design, kind of chaotic, 80s influence aesthetic for this project set in the year 1989. And that project has ended up kind of spilling over into other work that I've done. So for about a year and a half, there was this large mural on Hyde Street art wall of the Asian Art Museum. And that was this. And so the curator was like, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I want to basically do this, but like in a mural. So let me try that. But specifically because it was the Asian Art Museum, I wanted to do a mural that really talks about Asian American art history in the Bay and really name some names of folks who are incredibly profound contributors to arts and culture and who maybe didn't get their due, including folks like Keisei Sekamachi, who I believe is the only one who's still alive, Chiro Obata, Jade Snow Wong, Ruth Asawa, Carlos Villa, Bernice Bing, Arthur Okamura, Ernie Kim, and Leo Validor. So a real kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like my friend Rio was saying, they're like the round Mount Rushmore of Asian American artists. So that was another way in which I started trying to figure out how to use this aesthetic in new ways and build different motifs into the design of this thing. So a lot of the patterns and things you see in this mural were either things that I found in the Asian Art Museum's collection, or more significantly, things that were not in the Asian Art Museum's collection, as well as examples of little design motifs by these artists. So we keep pushing. During that first little stretch of COVID, when there was a lot of like storefront murals, I had done this wraparound. This was actually digital, and this was around the Look Folk jewelry in Chinatown. And the project in this kind of style of working keeps evolving. Like last May, it was outside, another version of this was outside of the San Francisco Public Library. It was part of their Weaving Stories Asian American Pacific Heritage Month celebrations. And it's come up here, which is kind of creeping us in the direction of talking about the piece back there. And so I keep playing with just strong color and with energy. I'm not really known for my subtlety, you guys. And so I found another way of working with maybe stripping down some of the more patterny design elements of that aesthetic I'd been working with. Because right around the time that I was asked to do this project at the Coulter Gallery in Stanford, my dad died. And I was going through this very chaotic period of like anxiety for caregiving for both parents, because my mother has her own health things. I got into a motorcycle accident. You guys, I like wrecked my finger and my wrist and my, like everything was going wrong, and I was a hot mess. And somehow, like, once again, this was a situation where, like, I could either, like, you know, constrict or I could expand. And for me, expanding and going bigger and bolder tends to be what works for me. It doesn't work if it's like a negative energy. Like, it doesn't work if it's rage or sarcasm. It usually has to be something more play-oriented for me to harness that energy effectively. So, built this whole installation over the course of a couple of months, which was a lot. And as you went through the front of the gallery into the back area, you went through this more graphic strategy stuff into, and I have a whole other thing about comics and speech bubbles feeling like little ghosts. Another lecture for another day. But as you pushed into the back room of the gallery, there were 4 large paintings, all from my special happy place, the future White House, room with the Madonna in. And you know, the term liminal space I know has taken on different kinds of resonances for your generation. It has a whole other use on the internet. But for me, like, liminal spaces are a place that I have always determined as being like that perfect in-between space that you don't really quite belong in, but maybe that makes you feel most at home. And hotel rooms are that for me, like airports are that for me. I think because I am such a fundamentally hybrid creature, that is where I feel the most correct. And what better place than the cartoon universe that is the Madonna Inn for me to grieve the loss of a parent, to deal with like some major like physical injuries, and just like the hardship of being an adult and life and Trump and I don't know, you guys, everything. This is how I cope. So the painting started there. It was not possible to show all of them here, obviously, but that is why there is that one back there. What you will see on the ground in this is a first version of the rocks that you will see in the back of the installation there. And when I revised the installation for a presentation at Frieze Art Fair in LA, Megan and I remade the rocks in a slightly different way. And hey, Jay, can you do me a favor? Can you go grab a rock for me? Okay, be really strong. Okay, it's coming this way. It's like, the dice need a friend. Yeah, just, but use your legs, yeah, exactly. Okay, great, Exactly, you do it, oh my God, you just yoked, oh my God.
What can I say?
Yeah.
Being a buzz cut lesbian helps.
Oh, yeah, let's throw there, okay,
Right here?
great, so strong. Yeah, everybody a round of applause for Jay. Yeah. But what wasn't intentional as the joke, but what has become like a real strange truism of this project is that, like, corny but maybe true, sometimes things are not as heavy as they seem. And so that seems to have been the operating motif. Like, rocks have come up in various paintings I've done over the years, but they weren't cartoonishly lightweight rocks until very recently. So there's something going on that is about, like, how do you contend with heavy things, hardship, in ways that might lessen your burdens. And so that's been like that stretch of the project. So I'll push through the last couple slides really quick, because, like, oh my God, you guys, another lecture for another day. But you remember the Orange Day from September of 2021? Yeah, like that was my feelings about the matter there. So I've been doing another series of very complementary color, intense color projects dealing with that in-between space of like blue being either soothing or depressing and orange being invigorating or being really aggressive. And so I've been making these projects about that. So here's another installation view of a series of drawings, paintings that are now in the collection of the Asian Art Museum. And I keep going back to this kind of the blue-orange binary and all the push and pull of that and the cartoon speech bubbles. But also now I'm into basketball, you guys, so like now I'm doing a lot of things that feel what I call these battlefields paintings, where you're looking at home and away, or like the vacillation between these worlds. Here's another piece from the series. This is something that I'm working on right now. And that leads actually into my love of water. And no, so many lectures. This is like 5,000 lectures in one. But a body work I've made about the Philippine-American diving champion, Vicky Manalo Graves, which is currently a mural at the San Francisco Museum of Water. Hi, Bill. And trying to, in another weird Wofford cartoonish way, like call forth marginalized stories that have maybe been dismissed and put them front and center in institutions and in memory. The last couple slides relate to these ideas of Filipino narratives, to sports, to color, because I'm not done with this basketball thing yet, you guys. And in fact, the thing that I'm working on over the summer is going to be this ongoing new basketball narrative I'm developing, which is that basketball was invented by Filipinas in the Philippines, like in 1898. And so, like, this is actually from 1910, and so this is one of my source photos for some drawings and paintings I'm building. But you know, when the U.S. occupied the Philippines, starting in the late 1800s, they implemented an American education system, which came with PE. And the first people doing PE in the Philippines, it was all, basketball was for girls. But then the Catholics decided that was like going to make them all into like, you know, lesbians and like, you know, tramps. And so they basically said girls can't play basketball anymore, which is why it's such a male-dominated sport in the Philippines, although everyone was obsessed with it. So I'm trying to restructure this narrative for the future. Deal with some like feminist rage I might have about this, but also get to talk about some basketball stuff I love. Also, go Valkyries. And so, you know, now I'm trying to reconcile the relationship between historic images like this, one of these like stereo photos from like probably late 1800s Philippines, and like maybe bring that basketball narrative into the space. So that's where I'm at. Thank you. Out of that.
I think we've entered our Q&A part. It's 1:45, so we have about 15 more minutes. Before we ask the audience, does anybody here have questions for each other? Or should I just open it up? Open. I'm hearing open. Okay. Any questions? Thoughts? I know that takes a minute, right, to warm up your brain. Yes?
Were you all like creative as children? I guess. Why add more words?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us more.
No shocker. I was kind of a weird kid. Had a lot of time alone. But yeah, I think for me it was originally like I wanted to be in the school play, also big shocker. But then we moved to the US and I got real shy, and then the art room was my safe place, and that's when I figured out other places to express myself.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I didn't have a lot of spaces at home. Like, we would draw and stuff at home, but I had access to some art programs in school, but I think it wasn't until I got to high school that I could be a little bit more like serious with it, or had the ability to take it seriously, as it wasn't necessarily something that was hugely supported or advocated in my home, but yeah.
I'd say yeah and no. I mean, both my grandmothers are like self-taught craftspeople. But then being like first gen in America, it was always like, you're going to be an engineer, right? And my college degree's in math.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it was always like this like dance for me between, and I really like mathematical thinking and philosophy, and that's where coding kind of came in for me. But it was always this like juggling act I've been doing. So, yeah. Thanks for the question.
I think there's one more.
We were talking about like the idea that, you were talking about the idea of like feeling like you can allow yourself to do work when it wasn't advocacy-based or like something like that. Do you feel like this project that you've done with like creating your typeface is kind of open that up for you, or do you still feel like you struggle with that like internal mass?
Yeah, I think it's opened it up a little bit. I think in most of my adult life, I've been a designer, and so I've always had those constraints, and like, it's opened up to like, oh, let's just go back to analog ways of making and exploring form. I will say I'm also a mom, and so it's not like I have endless amounts of time just to be in the studio and be exploratory, so I'm excited for it. I don't know if it's manifested past the typeface at this point, but I'm excited for it. Maybe ask me again, and that'll hold me accountable. Yeah, just a little bit, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I was just wondering if the actor getting attacked every single hour for 3 years, like, what was that? What did that make you emotional?
Yeah. It was interesting because I really thought that I would, like, every time I got it, I'd be like, ooh. And I'd have time to, like, research and write. And I remember the first time I got it, I was actually at, like, a birthday party for my child's friend. And I was like, what text did I get? And I was in the bathroom. And I'm like, I'm clearly not doing anything here right now. Like, my child is out there without my supervision. Like, you know, I gotta go back. So I think there were times where I would, like, really start researching them. There were times where I felt like the visual allure of the images, because a lot of them are beautiful images. Like, and that was what was interesting to me, was like how visual propaganda works in a way. And then there were times where I would feel like mocked by the text. Like, oh, you think I have time? Like, I don't have time for this. And I would just ignore it for like weeks on end. And all of that kind of became part of the work for me. Like, because a system is kind of neutral. Like, a bot is sort of neutral. And so how I reacted or responded to it was like more the work than the bot itself. So all of that kind of like went into the book and into the process. But also, like, I think I've always sort of felt between worlds, like being a citizen of 2 countries, feeling at home in 2 different places, but also not at home in 2 places. And so in a way, like, the texts were like this other world I was tapping into while my current world was going on. And so it kind of strangely made me feel really comfortable, because that's like a straddle I've always had to navigate in my life. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, there was something really familiar about it to me too. Yeah.
Can you talk about the point at time in which like you finally shut it off, the program, and like how that felt, how you got there?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the question of like, when do you shut off the bot? It's like a really good question for a new media artist. I don't know. For me, a software update broke my, like I used something called a cron tab in a Mac, which is like a job scheduler. That's in every Mac. You all have it if you have a Mac. And a software update like broke my file system. And I knew it would be like an easy fix, but at that point I just decided not to. And that was the end of it. Yeah.
Have you ever like thought of making that accessible to like anyone, so they can get like random like messages and whatever?
Yeah, I did think about it. I think for me, because so much of the work of the visual, like my relationship with visual media, whether it's like photographs or videos, is always that like an image doesn't actually speak for itself. Like it always has this interpretive layer. And so I kind of felt like I don't want anyone else to have this, because I don't know what it will mean to them. Like it doesn't have intrinsic or inherent meaning. So yeah, I ultimately felt like I didn't want it to be out there. And I think also for me, like, when I've been doing this work, I've been thinking about family lineage and like what these images mean to me versus what they mean to my father versus what they might mean to my child. And my father, and I look at these images together, and even though we really don't see eye to eye on Israel and Palestine, we can talk about the images, but we don't see the same thing in them. So when I thought about making it more public, I felt like, no, this has to be like kind of private, and I find a way of showing it or doing something with it that has some other thing that goes along with it that shapes it.
I have a question for the 3 of you, just, and I'm not sure if I'm going to word this very well, but who or what are you making your work for, if that makes makes sense. Do you feel obligations to, I don't know, to the politics that are out there, or just other things, and how do you juggle that, if that makes sense?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah.
The question was, who are we making work for? Right?
Yeah, or what, the why,
Why.
the way, like, are there obligations, political, personal, that kind of are there for you, haunting you, or not?
Yes, for me. I mean, that's like a big reason why the typeface feels uncomfortable to me, because I feel like I should be creating work that reacts or makes messages accessible, and so, yeah, I feel like it always has to, and I'm now wondering if it does. Like, is it liberating? Is it finding joy for myself, finding spaces for myself to just create without feeling an obligation? So I always feel an obligation to create work that's connected to something, but maybe it doesn't have to be. It's what I practice.
Yeah, I mean, more and more, I think I'm just at a place where I am making work for me, but there's more of a blurred boundary than there used to be. I mean, I think when I was younger and maybe angrier, I was pretty frustrated with just, you know, gender and race in the art world, and class, really, and that the art world seemed really, I think we all know the model on what it used to look like, and pretty much still is for the most part. And so I was really trying to make work that would feel like more folks of color, like more women, more non-binary folks would feel like this is their space and they could see themselves reflected in the work. But I think beyond that, like there's just times where I think that's just now implicit in what I'm making. It doesn't have to be explicit. So that may be the difference.
Yeah, I still grapple with that. I feel like when I was in grad school, I always made work for my friend Claire. I just imagined it would all be for Claire, and like Claire and I shared the same sense of humor, and like that was really good. But if I just imagined like a blank gallery, my work was horrible. But I think lately, like my work that's more political often comes out of trying to reconcile an like ideological gap with my father that I will never ever reconcile, but I will never stop wanting to. And like we're really close actually, and we like love each other and respect each other a lot, so we do still have a really strong connection even with that. But yeah, it's like this urge I can't rid myself of, and I don't know why I won't let it go. I don't know. Yeah.
There was a question.
Yeah.
It's not actually a question. I just want to say thank you all for sharing. It's really cool to see all your work. My favorite thing about like this whole thing is I feel like even if you guys hadn't spoke, but you guys had all put your presentation specifically with just your work, I feel like I could have figured out whose work was whose. Because like all your outfits like kind of like you come in with the green and like it's very solid colors, and I saw that in your piece. And then you with your typography, I feel like it just matches your aesthetic, and your outfit reminds me of coding for some reason. I just thought that was very interesting.
We're embodying our work. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe one more question? It's like you might be there.
That's all right. For Professor Wofford, I was just wondering, I found like the evolution of like you're using the 80s style patterns to going more to like color blocking really interesting. Like what kind of like informed that evolution in your creative process?
Thank you. That's a great question. Specifically, that first slide with me in the clown wig with all the dancers behind me, it was for a project that was set in 1989 at the moment of the Loma Prieta earthquake, which really disrupted so much in the Bay Area. And so I wanted a very particular kind of 80s aesthetic. And so I was, you know, shopping around looking at a lot of different things, but I think the sweet spot for me was really looking at Memphis design, and in very particular the palette aspect of it, which, because they were doing furniture and many other things, but the real graphic bold color, often coupled with other kinds of patterns interspersed there. And I liked that, and I particularly loved how it's one of those aesthetics that has gotten absolutely bastardized and just became like the worst thing ever as it progressed, which is what I was kind of going for in some ways. Was trying to cannibalize it in my own special way. But it was conceptually originally because I really did want to locate this thing in a particular mid-late 80s aesthetic, and now it's kind of just its own monster.
we should say thank you for being